Welcome to the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions and our Sustainability Talk series. My name is David Hart. I'm the director here. It's great to have you with us. So now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Gabe McPhail. One of the many things I admire about Gabe is their deep belief in the power of community. In addition to Gabe's incredible depth and breadth of professional experience as a facilitator and a planner, they've played a wide range of important volunteer roles on Vinyl including with the Economic Development Advisory Board, the Budget Committee, the Sea Level Rise Committee, the Downtown Revitalization Committee, the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee. I suspect there are many more. You get the idea. Indeed, Gabe is an inspiring example of the kind of community leader whose personal and professional lives seem to be inseparable. As you're about to hear, Gabe's focus on building community resilience isn't just about what we need to do. It's about how we need to do it. Conversations by conversation, relationship by relationship, community by community. Please join me in welcoming Gabe to the Mitchell Center.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Gabe.
Hi, I'm really grateful to be here with you all today. Both folks in the room and folks joining from afar via Zoom. Grateful for that option as I'm taking that option as well. David, thank you for the gracious introduction. As David said, I'm Gabe McPhail. I'm the founder of Resilient Communities, a community resilience and planning organization. And I work in collaboration with many wonderful Maine people, mostly in small coastal towns and island communities, supporting them as they navigate really complex questions around community and climate resilience. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my two amazing colleagues who I collaborate with regularly, Morgan and Mia. Hi, Morgan. Hi, Mia. I'm titling this talk, Who Do You Choose to Be? Because that's the question that I come back to over and over again. And that's really the question I'm going to invite you to consider today. To me, the question, who do you choose to be, is not really about credentials or, career moves or what I'm doing in life. It's really about values. To me, it's a spiritual question. I borrowed the phrase from Margaret Wheatley, whose book, Who Do We Choose to Be, deeply shaped my work and my trajectory. Years ago, I read her book, So Far From Home. And at the time, I was totally burnt out. I was focused on working harder, not smarter. I was really trying to create change through impactful projects that were really focused on outcomes and deliverables and less about process. And at the time, I went on to read Who Do We Choose to Be? And that book really fostered my commitment to do meaningful work in a way that resonated with my true self. It really solidified something simple but profound, that focusing on the how rather than the what is really fundamental. And that commitment to how I do my work is what really helps me thrive. This quote is from Who Do We Choose to Be? And it really shifted my thinking. We can't change this world, but we can change ourselves so that we can be of service to the world. And rather than focus on the what of resilient work that I do, resilience work that I do in community with others, the projects, the programs, I really feel called to share the how. And that's, as David mentioned, it's really the relationships, the values. It's that unseen architecture. And that's what I think really makes collaboration in the resilient space work. I'd really like to start with a quick reflection, and I'm going to invite you all to participate in responding to this question. If you have access to a smartphone, you can use the QR code or the info that's at the top of the screen. And if you're joining by Zoom, you can use that QR code, or I just dropped some information in the chat so you can access things. So, yeah, let's think about what's one word you associate with collaboration. I'm really curious to see what you come up with. It's whatever you think, whatever you feel. I love how respect is front and center. That's really beautiful. Getting some words in the chat as well. Time consuming. That's so true. Partnerships. Patience. That's another really good one. Oh, beautiful. This looks, yep, facilitation, listening, understanding. These are great. Yeah, I invite you to keep sharing, keep contributing. For me, collaboration, it used to mean mostly compromising, coordinating, herding cats, a lot of cooperation. It was really about getting things done efficiently with others. And sometimes, to be honest, it still means those things, but over time, collaboration has really become something much deeper, a space where I can build something with others in a way that really honors the collective wisdom of those involved. And I want to share my experience of collaboration with you, but I need to start with values because I've found that I can only collaborate well if I know what I'm bringing into a group or a partnership. And that really starts with knowing my values and understanding how they translate into practice. So I think I first started to like get what my values were as a kid when I started to feel internal dissonance when my values were violated. And I think one of the earliest examples I can remember is being in elementary school and watching a teacher pick on a student. You probably wouldn't see that today, but back when I was in elementary school, that was I guess still okay to do. And so this particular student, this classmate of mine, was from a lower income family, and he was someone that, didn't always or wasn't always able to come to school with clean clothes. Clearly his family didn't have the same resources as some of the other kids. And the teacher called him lazy. He called him stupid. And other kids, they laughed. They thought that was funny. And I remember how sick that made me feel. Like I got really angry. Even as a little kid, I didn't know what to do, but I picked up the pencil on my desk and I just threw it at the teacher. That's definitely a little kid response. But I I knew like something in me knew like this is wrong. This isn't right. And I can't just sit here and do nothing. That was probably the first time I acted from my values, at least that I can remember, without really knowing how to name them. And for me, naming values is a journey. I grew up in a home that was shaped by addiction. And like many kids in that environment, I learned to survive by becoming what other people really needed me to be. I learned to read the room, morph into different versions of myself, and keep peace, or I would shut down. These are all strategies that I use to help me get by, and ones that really over time pulled me away from what I consider my true self. And as an adult, I've been privileged. I've had access to support, therapy, and recovery. And through that healing process, I reconnected with that true self, what I call like my spiritual self that I had lost. And I began to discover and start to name my values. I became more and more aware that when I'm not aligned with my values, I feel this dissonance. So, what are my values? How do my values translate into practice? I'm going to share them here so you get a sense of my relationship to these values. There's no ranking here because they're all fundamental. So I've just listed them alphabetically. So the first one is awareness, and to me, that's doing my best to really notice what's happening, not just in the world around me, but in me internally. And then there's accountability. And that's really like showing up. It's about being honest with myself. It's being honest with others about what I haven't done, what I have done. And then clarity is one of my favorite values. Asking questions. Is anything unclear? And I'm always asking for clarity. But it's also about communicating clearly and asking if further clarification is needed. Empathy. That's me doing my best to really understand others and to see things from their perspective. And equity, to me, that's recognizing inequities and working to correct them. Gratitude is one of my favorites, and it's not always easy, but it's for me, trying to be thankful of just what is. And that's, like I said, not always easy. Humility, to me, that's letting go of being right, being open to uncertainty. It's really trusting the universe. Got to go with the flow. Integrity, that's practicing my values, meaning what I say. Joy is feeling gratitude, wonder, feeling happiness. Respect, another one that's about showing up, really treating others as they've asked to be treated. Serenity, one of my favorites. I think of that as just another sort of surrender, letting go, and then just being here now, being present. And you'll hear me mention this one a few more times today, but service. And that's not just saying like, hey, this is what I'm going to do to help, but it's asking how I can help. And then sustainability, really, really fundamental. Committing in the work to sustainable solutions. So these are the values and practices that I use to guide how I do my work in the world. They really guide me toward right action and help me answer my guiding question, who do I choose to be in this moment and in the work and in this collaboration? So I'm going to ask you for another invitation to join me if you're willing to share some of your own values. Again, using your smartphone or that link in the chat, take a few seconds to respond. What are some of your values if you're willing to share? These are lovely. Respect, empathy, compassion, authenticity. It's lovely. Kindness. Humor is a great one. I love that. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Care and accountability. Reliability. That's great. Dignity. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you all. I really appreciate seeing these. Yeah, in my experience, living my values in systems, in real systems, and a lot of times these are systems I can't impact. That's a challenge, and oftentimes it's not safe. It's not safe to live one's values. Oftentimes, so and it's oftentimes not welcome or encouraged. It can be very vulnerable. It can be very risky, and that in and of itself can be really discouraging. When I work in collaboration without values alignment, I find myself focused on what and not how. And I start to consider outcomes and deliverables more than I consider building relationships or being in service to community. I really, I really love this quote. Many of you are likely familiar with the writer, comedian, commentator, um, uh, Barrett. Sorry, I know how to pronounce his name and I just forgot. Baratunde Thurston. Thank you. This quote is of his, like, this really resonates with me. It's a weaker faith that cannot withstand challenge and get deeper in response. Uh, this reminds me that I have the privilege to choose to be in my values, even when it's a challenge to do so by leaning into rather than leaning away from my values, I'm able to show up for those who I'm collaborating with and those I'm in service to. I wanted to begin with values in this talk because I believe really they're the essence of resilience work. They are the how, they are the practice. And now I want to jump to actually sharing about some of the collaborations that I'm currently engaged in. I really think resilience work is inherently collaborative. Earlier, I shared that collaboration is a space where I can build something in a way that honors collective wisdom of all those involved. And that belief comes from working with others on complex opportunities and challenges and learning what it actually takes to build something together. So in 2021, I was invited by Abby Sherwin. Many of you probably know Abby. At the time, Abby was the Coastal Resilience Coordinator and Senior Planner at Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, or SMPDC, and also invited by Parker Gassett, who was at the time the Community Climate Resilience Coordinator at Maine Sea Grant. And I was invited by them to help shape a regional collaborative to support the Community Resilience Partnership, or CRP. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the CRP, you can scan the QR code. It's a state program designed to provide resources to communities to build climate resilience and sustainability. And the state had just launched the CRP and put out an RFP, request for proposals, to fund 4 regional coordinator positions across Maine. And the role of regional coordinators is to support communities enrolled in the Community Resilience Partnership. So in Southern and Mid-Coast Maine, the question wasn't who should take on this role or which entity or organization should apply, but rather what could we all do together? What if instead of just one organization applying, a group of us came together, like nonprofits, regional planning commissions, state agency partners, community partners? What if we came together and formed a collaborative? And that's how the Region 1 Coordinator Collaborative, or R1CC, was born. Um, I don't expect you to read through all of this, but I just wanted to share this diagram of R1CC. My role with R1CC was to facilitate and help manage the collaborative. The collaborative included a core team of 4 regional planning organizations and 9 advisory partners, and you can see who everyone is here. on this on the bottom row there. Those are our advisory partners. My co-leads in the project, these are Abby Sherwin and Karina Grader at Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, Sarah Mills-Knapp from Greater Portland Council of Governments, and Emily Rabi and Laura Graziano from Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission. And we agreed on a shared decision-making process, developed working agreements. We'd use those to operate. We met weekly to focus on being how we can be of service to the communities in our region. We met quarterly with this broader collaborative, the advisory partners. We co-created an equity framework to use to guide our work. You can kind of see evidence of our values in that framework because what's there are guiding questions and resources for equity-centered decision-making and actions in procedures, engagement, assessment, planning, and implementation. Over the course of 2.5 years, R1CC was able to work with over 79 communities in the region and also helped access, I think, over $21 million in grants for community projects. Those are just some hard metrics to demonstrate success, but I really think the greatest measure of success is the effectiveness of the collaborative to be in service to communities. And R1CC has now evolved into SMRCC, the Southern and Midcoast Regional Coordinator Collaborative. Rather than all of us operating as a single regional coordinator for our region, each regional planning office in the region that we work has one regional coordinator. So there are a total of 4 in the Southern and Mid-Coast and 6 others across the state and Western, Central, Eastern, Northern Maine, all in planning organizations and all funded through Resilient Maine, which, if you don't know, is the $69 million climate resilience grant from NOAA that the state received. And as part of Resilient Maine, this is great news. The state has brought on a coordinator for all of the regional coordinators. So Marina Tomer is CRP's new regional coordinator program manager, and she'll support collaborative work among the state's regional coordinators. So it's really exciting for all of us. And while SMRCC, it definitely looks a little different than R1CC, it's still a collaborative with shared goals and with a shared primary purpose, and that is to support CRP communities. And my role in the collaborative definitely looks a little different than it did when we were R1CC, but I'm bringing the same values to the work as I did before. So the second collaborative I want to share is one that is especially close to my heart right now. It's the Maine Islands Project, or MIP. So for those of you who don't know, I think it was made probably made clear in David's introduction, but I live on the island of Vinyl Haven, and I've spent much of my life as a resilience planner working with island communities. So if you've ever lived or if you currently live or ever have lived in a small town where everyone knows everyone and what they're up to, you just have to multiply that by 100, and that's what it's like on an island. And that to me means like being in community isn't like an extra, isn't something you have to try to do. It's kind of the default. People really show up for each other, and collaboration isn't like an optional thing. It's really about survival. So MIP is a collaboration between many partners: the Island Institute, Beach Hill Research, regional planning commissions, nonprofits, and of course, all of the community members and leaders that we work with across Maine's unbridged islands. So I co-lead the MIP with Dr. Abby Roach, who's a UMaine alum and one of the most thoughtful and grounded collaborators that I have the privilege of working with. The purpose of MIP really is to support island communities as they assess climate risks, identify resilience priorities, and develop community-led strategies for their futures. What matters most to us in this work isn't just what we do. This is a familiar theme. It's really how we do it. So Abby and I, we really make time very intentionally to check in with each other when we meet each week. And some of the questions that come up are like, how are we being of service to the island communities we work with? How do we need to show up for communities? How can we work more efficiently with communities and our partners? So we're building on existing wins and putting resources where they really are needed most. We aim for clear, consistent communication with each other, our partners, with the communities we work with. We aim to practice humility by inviting community wisdom to lead and guide us. Our role really is to support, to amplify, and to ask questions and seek to understand. We're not there to be prescriptive or directive. Our focus really is on facilitative leadership, supporting, understanding, and most importantly, just being there, showing up. I really love this quote. This is from found in What If We Get It Right? Visions of Climate Futures. So author Dr. Elizabeth Johnson, she has this great quote. There's a little prequel to it, but I have the tail end of it here. The main thing is that you're just showing up, that you're here, and that you're finding ever more capacity to love this world because it will not be healed without that. I really do love this. It makes me think about the approach we have to the Maine Islands Project work. So lastly, this is not going to be unfamiliar to anybody, co-sponsors of today's talk. I want to share a little bit about what I've experienced being part of the collaboration that is MAINECAN, the Maine Community-Led Energy and Climate Action Network. So likely many of you are very familiar with MAINECAN. You know it, you probably know it very well. It's a network organized by a group of deeply committed students, faculty, practitioners, researchers, supported by the Mitchell Center and led by Dr. Sharon Klein. MAINECAN is meant to serve as a space for alignment, resource sharing, peer support among those working on community-driven climate and energy justice challenges and opportunities across the state. What I really love about this collaboration is that it's still growing, it's becoming, it's not fully defined. It's a living collaboration and asking, it's asking questions like, what kind of structure do we need, or what kind of structure don't we need? How are we going to make decisions? Who should be a part of this collaborative? Those are all really beautiful questions because they show a willingness not to rush, to be very mindful, not to default to like hierarchy or control, and really to let the group's purpose and identity just emerge over time. I've been part of conversations about MaineCAN's evolving governance. All of us share different opinions. That's not uncommon, but we're trying to practice consensus building in a way that it gives equal voice and responsibility to everyone who's involved. We're really trying to center equity while acknowledging the real limits of time, funding, and also of capacity and bandwidth. We're asking some of the same questions that I ask myself in my work. How are we practicing our mission? Who else needs to be here? What's the next right action we're going to take? Not so the loudest voice can speak up, but just so we have a collective good. MAINECAN is really rooted in a shared desire to build something new and to do it together. So what about when things don't go so well? I've shared three stories about collaborations that work, that they feel aligned, they feel generative, and grounded in a shared purpose. But what about when things don't go so well? It's really easy to celebrate collaboration when everything's just flowing along, and it's much harder to talk about the moments when we feel our values are out of step and when we're pulled in different directions. When we want to serve with integrity, but the systems that we're working in or the stories that we carry just make it feel like that's not even possible. So I'd like to share about living my values in systems that don't support them. There have been a lot of times when I've had to ask myself, like, can I live my values in this role, in this space, or even in this partnership? And sometimes the answer is yes. So, when I reflect, but sometimes the answer is no, or not fully. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, definitely not, and not anymore. And that's really painful because when I care really deeply about the work, that's hard. But what I've learned through experience and through my recovery and through collaborations is that I'm really accountable to myself first. And at the end of the day, I have to be able to look at my actions and ask, like, was I honest? Was I in alignment? Did I act with integrity, even if it cost me something? Doesn't mean that I get this right all the time. I really don't, but it means I try to notice when I'm out of alignment, and then I try to choose differently. I found this can happen to me, the trap of deliverables, I call it. It's a tension. It's one of the bigger tensions I feel in collaborations. It's this pressure to produce these deliverables, and I totally get this. This is what we have to do. I write a lot of grants. I track metrics. I have to see a lot of projects to fruition. Write a lot of reports. I understand what's required in institutional systems, but even if I don't fully agree all the time with those systems, but somewhere along the way, when I'm feeling this tension, I have to ask, like, what am I sacrificing in order to comply with these systems? Like, am I ending up ignoring community voices because there's no capacity for engagement? Am I just checking off boxes instead of focusing on building trusted relationships? Am I forging or foregoing collaborations because it's less challenging not to collaborate, which it is sometimes? Sometimes the answer to these questions might be yes. And when I feel that misalignment, I really pause and I ask some questions. What would service look like here? Um, what does humility look like? What's the next right action for me to take? It doesn't mean there is no such thing as like the perfect action or the most efficient action, but what next action feels the most aligned to my values. So one of the biggest gifts I feel of my recovery journey has been learning to ask for help. Uh, once upon a time, I thought I had to do everything by myself. And if I couldn't do it by myself, I was definitely not succeeding. But that is not humility. Humility for me is really about saying, like, I don't know. I need others to help. Um, your voice is as important and matters as much as my voice. And you know, let's do this together. I now believe that no meaningful project is ever done alone, and that I'm only ever going to be one voice in a conversation that needs many voices. Um, Collaboration as an act of letting go. I've learned again and again that to collaborate well, I have to be willing to let go. Um, I'm letting go of outcomes and like certainly outcomes that I might think are like the preferred outcome. I have to let go of needing to be right. I have to assume I'm not going to be right. I let go of credit. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who gets credit. And really, this can be hard too when you're looking at a scope of work and deliverables that you're supposed to produce, letting go of an original plan when it no longer serves its purpose. Like, how can it be adapted? How can it change? As a facilitator, one of the most important lessons I've learned is to help people focus on shared interests and not fixed positions. If we know why we're here, if we share our purpose and know our values, then we don't have to agree on everything. We can build something that is greater than the sum of all its parts. So I want to end with this quote by Meg Wheatley. This really speaks to showing up together with your values, like right on your sleeve, to do the work you're being called to do. Focus on serving others, no matter what's going on around us. We can attend to the people in front of us, to the issues confronting us, and there we can offer what we can. We can offer insight and compassion. We can be present. We can stay and not flee. We can be exemplars of the best human qualities. That is a life well lived, even if we didn't save the world. And I'm going to invite you to join me with one final reflection. Who do you choose to be in your work moving forward? You might want to be more present, more patient, more willing to pause, more open to others. But if you're willing to take a minute and share your response, I would be very grateful. I really love these. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. These are really beautiful, everyone. Please keep sharing. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing these. They're quite lovely. Very good. I'm going to pull us forward, but please do
Gabe,
keep sharing. Yes, hi.
hi. Um, so those are wonderful, and I hope they keep popping up somewhere. Is it all right if I open things up with our folks who've been listening?
Yeah, definitely. And I want to just do a quick shout out to Jack Sullivan and thank him for the wonderful photographs that he shared with me for this presentation. So
Well, let's
another
just take a
collaboration.
quick, quick stop and thank Gabe for a wonderful bus. Go ahead, please. Okay. So, William, you're standing by. You got anything you want to do with the chatted yet? Because not all.
Yeah, hopeful stuff will come in. We got some questions.
So in the room, love to kind of help facilitate, not as effectively as Gabe, kind of conversation here. So anybody want to go first? Yeah, Jake.
First off, I just want to say I really enjoyed listening to your presentation, the way that you talk so openly about centering values in the work that you're doing. I feel like as a undergraduate in environmental science, one thing that I've struggled with as I'm starting to think about postgrad is how do I find somewhere where I can work that feels aligned with my values and find a position where I feel like I'm doing work that's aligned with my values. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about, like what your process is, what you're asking yourself when you're starting resilient communities, or when you found yourself in roles in the past where you started to question whether or not what you were doing was really aligned with your values.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I can just use resilient communities as an example because I think it's a good illustration of sort of a tipping point of making a values-based decision. And I will preface this by saying that I do have kind of a high risk tolerance. I also don't have dependence. I have the freedom to make a lot of choices where I don't have to consider others, and not everyone obviously is in that position. So uh, I had a, I have been an entrepreneur for most of my life, but at the time, before I started Resilient Communities, I was a W-2 employee and I was being offered a considerable raise and benefits in that position. And I was 2 weeks out of fully entering that position and decided I wasn't going to do it because of the dissonance I felt internally. And I think it's really, for me, it's like feeling what I'm feeling. Like if it feels wrong, like they say, like, listen to your gut. Yeah, that's something going on there. So I just said I can't work somewhere where I'm feeling this dissonance. I need to be able to make the choices I need to make. I need to be able to make sure my actions align with my values. And if I'm, you know, uh, in a situation where I'm beholden to somebody else and what they're telling me I have to do regardless, I can't do it. So, I mean, being an entrepreneur is great that way because you can make those decisions. But there are so many amazing organizations out there, entities that are mission-driven businesses, and organizations and nonprofits that have amazing cultures. So I encourage you in your exploration and talk to folks, like get down to like how people are feeling, what the culture is like. That's going to tell you a lot, if it aligns with who you are.
Some of the spaces that I work feel like there is this constant time pressure, that like a sometimes manufactured sense of urgency that doesn't need to be there, kind of prevents you from doing the deep work, the deep thinking. Do you have any practical tips of how you, I don't know, prevent that in your work and make sure that you're doing due diligence and acting deeply?
Yeah, that's another great question. Oh, and I feel you for sure. Yeah, that I can really empathize with that. That's a hard one because so many like the decisions around how things are gonna unfold, like, maybe out of your control. It sounds like they are. It takes a lot to ensure that the time that's needed is put into projects, and with so many competing priorities, it has to be valued. Like someone in decision making capacity has to be able to say, we value putting in the time to do that engagement or do that deep work. And if that's not a priority, like likely it's not going to happen. And then if someone is choosing to do that, oftentimes you're doing it sort of at your own cost or your own risk. So, yeah, I feel like advocating for, that being in a scope of work or in a project, like how can we insert this ahead of time so we know it's part of the timeline? And I think I work mostly with, nonprofits and municipalities, and we're seeing it more and more where people are acknowledging the time it takes to do the work that we want to do to make it meaningful. And how do you pay for that? And who needs to be involved? And how do you pay folks stipends so they can be engaged? So there are definitely all these decisions that have to be made, like sort of at the outset. But first and foremost, that has to be valued in order to really consider adding it in.
Ira?
I appreciate you emphasizing that all these values are important, but I would want to ask, when it comes to sustainability work, which of these values do you think we do often override or overlook or probably do forget about?
Another great question. Thank you. Oh boy, and sustainability work. I don't know if this is true. I'm just gonna say what is coming to me right now. Yeah, I don't know why, but empathy is coming into my head as like being uh something that yeah, I guess just needing to focus on empathy and just like really being able to see and understand. And again, like, I work in communities, so to me that means like a technical service provider or practitioner may have a clear idea of solution or thought that's going to work, but it doesn't work for the community, or it's not going to work, and people are clearly saying that, but it's not being heard. So I think empathy. I'm sure you could ask a million other folks and they would have different opinions, but I'm sharing what's coming to mind and what's in my heart right now.
Let me, for a second, switch back to William. It sounds like you might have some stuff in the chat.
So we have a question in the chat. So here it is. If your community has no existing organizations with similar values, how can you begin to bring people together? This person adds, it's difficult to find a way to form connections with others when there's so much space between everyone.
Yeah, that's so true. I would say not knowing what you're working in, but if you're in a sustainability or resilience space, you could come to MAINECAN meetings. There's also Local Leads the Way that are hosted by the organization A Climate to Thrive. That brings people across Maine together who are working on community driven climate action projects. You can meet folks there. And even just like, yeah, like going to events that usually like nonprofits might host, like, you know, it might be something a Climate to Thrive would host, or the Center for Ecology-Based Economy. There are all sorts of very like celebratory, collaborative type events where folks get together to really celebrate successes, as well as like, you know, learning information and sharing resources. But there may be folks that you know, you end up connecting with, you know, that do have like values.
Thank you so much, Gabe. I really have enjoyed your talk, and I find it really inspiring how much you've been able to center your work on your own values. And I think I was, as you were talking, just reflecting on sustainability a little bit, but almost as a broader term. And when it comes to maybe personal sustainability, I wonder if you see that factoring in to how much you center your values as sort of like a form of sustainability internally, if that's something you've thought about or something you have any thoughts on. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a little circular economy going on in here. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it I don't want to use the word balance. I guess I just did, but it just feels like yeah, things have to align in order to keep going. And like um you know, that's it if I'm feeling aligned in myself, then that is sustainable, and that then allows me to continue the work. I know what the other side looks like. I've spent probably, you know, over a decade in what felt like burnout. And we all know that doesn't end well. Even if you haven't experienced it, you know it's not sustainable. So yeah, it definitely is like that constant sort of inventory of checking in and you know, writing things and, you know, making sure all the systems are working so things can keep going. And we all know, like, sustainability, resilience work, it's iterative, right? We're never going to be done. So we need to really be in the process, and how can we be sustainable in ourselves and in the process.
Yeah.
Do you have any good tips on how you keep your team motivated and on track when things aren't going as planned, even though you do try and let go of the outcomes?
Another good question. So um no, I don't, you know, I don't necessarily, like, I collaborate with people, so I don't have like I don't have staff. I have folks that I collaborate with. So I'm not necessarily, you know, often in like I am the lead position. So I think it's really just like across the team, you know, what are each of us bringing? And so it's really, I think, creating space for, you know, I mentioned what Abby and I do every time we meet, you know, even if there's, you know, not much that we need to share, we make it purposeful that we're connecting and checking in on an emotional or spiritual level before we start diving into the work. Because if there are things that need to be resolved or changes that need to be made, in terms of if we even can meet that day, because, you know, maybe it's not good, maybe we can't focus, then those are like sort of spaces that like we're willing to adjust and adapt. And I think in terms of like the other folks that I work with, I think just, yeah, everyone having a level of compassion and flexibility. And even when deliverables are like you're down to the wire and you have to get something done, you know, you can still find ways to support and you know, hold up each other in that space, and maybe take the pressure off someone, and you know, provide a little bit more to someone else to be able to finish something. So it's really, I think, again, like, you know, leaning into some of those values. I keep coming back to empathy for some reason today, but just like, yeah, like how are other people feeling? Can we understand where they're at? And how do we adjust to really support things still getting done, but to support each other in that space?
Yeah.
So Gabe, I have a bunch of questions for myself, but I'm gonna save them for later. I hope I can follow up with you sometime, but this has really been wonderful. It's clear that you bring a lot to this work. It's hard work, so it's a good thing you bring it all, but you're also just a great role model for us in work that is out there waiting for us to show up. So thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much.